Hi guys, morning. It's Eric in the alley. Today I got Aaron's son's. Is him and his girlfriend's Hyundai SantaFe. They're putting a little bit of money into it. It's got 150,000 miles on it. Struts are bad, tires are bad. He needs that for an inspection and alignment. So I'm going to put the struts and sway bar bushings on it today, and hopefully get enough time. Yeah, if I do, just do a couple quick tests with the scope, do like a, RC test and a starting and charging test. Just keep them aware of any problems that might be coming. They do use this car for DoorDash occasionally, and, ask any mechanic, that's the worst thing you could possibly do to a vehicle. If you're going to do DoorDash, you have to get a taxi model, man. You're out or lease it. All right, guys, but I'm good. I'll show you one side in case you do have a Santa Fe and you're interested in changing the struts and the sway bar links, and the scope might be a separate one, or I'll leave it at the end. It just depends, but we'll see how it goes. All right, guys. Yeah, here's a look at the car. It's only a front wheel drive Hyundai Santa Fe 2007. Pretty nice shape, but 150,000 miles. I believe the only reason it doesn't have any troubles is because it does have the V6, which, at that mileage, you're going to be needing some time and change really soon too. So, I mean, anything I could find out about it that's going to keep them a little bit ahead of the game, It's a V6 doesn't have to work nearly as hard, but I mean, it does have some serviceable parts in it. So if this is a 4-cylinder, I don't know if it would have got this far because it's only pushing 2 wheels. Yeah, struts are pretty bad. They're blown out and, pretty rusty. And one thing I'd recommend, if you are changing struts on anything, it has the stay pin. The stabilizer pins are very cheap, so order a set of them when you order your struts, because this way we're going to totally avoid taking this bolt off. If you look at how a stabilizer pin is, it's almost like a ball joint. See this one down here? This is the one we're going to take off. This is a 17 millimeter on this side, but whenever you go to turn that, the ball turns in here. So I have an acetylene torch. If you have one handy, I just blow this off. But what I'm going to do is I have a little map gas left in the tank. This would be like if you were at home, and this is it's a very easy way. The map gas will get that bolt cherry red. Then we'll take it off with a 17 millimeter wrench. Right there's where I'm heating up. You might smell a little oil or grease coming out of the other side of this ball joint, or the ball part, but this will turn it good and red. And see, that's about enough. That's what you want. And there's some of that smoke I was telling you about. And see, guys, the ball popped off of this one, which is actually a blessing in disguise, because you could just grab that stud right there with vice grips now, and it'll come off very easy. I'll get that set up on the tripod and I'll show you. Okay, it's a little bit weird spot for the camera, but that's what you want to do is, if that stay pin comes off and you're left with that ball, just put some vice grips to it like that. Once you got it hot, it'll rest up against the axle. And it's just coming right off now. It's a weird spot. You can't get a ratchet, but if you have a ratchet wrench, I'm sure you could get it in there. I have one here. I just don't like using a ratchet wrench to break the bolts. It usually takes, a little bit more force than you want to put on a ratchet. Okay, and we get that out of there. Make sure you let that cool down. Don't set it up against a tire or anything. But now the upper part we're going to just leave on there because we have a new one that's attached to the strut. You don't want to waste no gas or no time taking this one off. Just take the whole strut off. This will come with it. Next, we're going to remove the ABS wire, and it's just pushed in there on the rubber grommet. Pull it out of the way. You don't really have to take it off here or hold it back, but just be mindful whenever you're putting in the new strut. You don't want to snag this wire. Next, what we're going to do is just take out the two strut bolts here and the one below it. But we're going to just loosen the nuts, and we're going to leave the bolts in them for now until we take off the top. But this side's a 19, and this side's a 17 again. The bolt's a 17. And the nut on the other side's a 19. So you're going to just leave the bolt in there for right now. So this one's the brake caliper's getting in the way, the brake hose. So what I'm going to do is use a 19 millimeter ratchet wrench on this side. Okay guys, on this side I couldn't get the 19 millimeter impact in, so I switched to 17 millimeter where you could use a socket, and we're going to just hold this with 19 millimeter wrench. Just like that. Now I'm going to leave them bolts in because it's easier leaving these bolts in and then taking the three under the hood off. Then it's going to hang here, so you could get under here and take these bolts off. If you take these bolts out, when you drop the top, the strut's going to drop. Okay guys, now we're up underneath the hood. Now these bolts, you could give them a shot of whatever you got if you want. Then these are, I believe, 14 millimeter. Yes. You see how strut's lowering? If we already took them bottom bolts out, the strut would have came down. It could have taken out that ABS wire, could have damaged the brake hose. So that's why I leave them bolts in there till I could get underneath there and hold the strut up while I pull the bolts. Okay, now back under here, this is where you could take out, push the bolts out. You can move it. Sometimes it's easier grabbing them. So there's no weight on anything now. Just the weight of the strut. See anything that would be holding these bolts. So you just pull them right out. But when you take this last one out, there's nothing holding the strut left. This is going to come out a little bit. And what we're going to want to watch, because we have to come out this side. If you're unsure, take out this 10 millimeter bolt. It'll let you move this wire further away. But what I'm going to do is pull this out. Now there's nothing holding the strut at all now. I'm going to just give it a good wiggle and pull out on it. And see how I made sure I didn't catch that ABS wire. If you're a little bit unsure about that, all you got to do is take this 10 millimeter bolt off, pull this more out of the way. I've just wiggled so many of these out of there, I don't need to, not going to say I'll never catch one, but, Hopefully not. Okay, putting a new one in, we want to make sure we got the right side, because there's a hole for the stabilizer bar, the pin, and then there's a clip for the ABS wire. On the other one, it's going to be reversed for the driver's side. So you want to make sure you got the right one now, because they'll both fit in there, but you want to make sure you get the right side before you put it in. And next what I'm going to do is kind of the opposite of that. I'm going to, being I'm working by myself, if you have two people or if you have a friend, one person can hold it from the bottom, but I'm going to just hold it with one hand on the bottom, line up the bearing plate, and just put one of these nuts back on to hold it. All right, guys, that gets about both down the bottom and the top in the view. So sometimes this is fun by yourself. These are pretty heavy, so you got to be prepared to hold them up a minute. Now, I'm not even worried about putting it in there. I'm going to just get it around the axle in this light. Actually, and you always find something you can rest. It's on the sway bar right now, just resting there. Then just hold it and get to the top. Light might get in the way there. Then you can almost see the bolts. And you just pick up on the strut. This is where a buddy comes in handy. Just one nut'll do it. There, we'll just let her hang. Like you say, if it makes you a little nervous with this wire, take that 10mm off and you'll get some more room out of it. Okay, see, mostly all you're seeing on of the top was my back, but this is the nut I put on. That's all it's hanging on by now. But what I'm going to do now is I don't torque these. You could look up the torque spec for these, but anything I don't torque, I put blue Loctite on. It's, you know, just a little bit of insurance, and it's one of these bottles will last you for years. You only use a very little bit of it, but one is up here now. I'll put it on them too, and then take this one back off. And see, I'll use these to run the bolts on, but I never trust the grip on these for the final tightening, especially if you're not going to torque it. I just put a regular ratchet on there. That's where the feel comes from. These things you don't know. You know, I'm not as good at judging with an electric ratchet as I am an old steel Craftsman. That's a trick I picked up from watching Erica. These are the nuts that came with the struts. The OGs, it calls them the original gangsters. Those go back on. Those are better still than these new ones are. They might look nice and shiny, but... All right, the next step now, if this is in there securely, the strut, take a wire wheel, a wire brush, anything you got across these. Because then we're going to put little anti-seize around this while it goes in there. Just so next time it doesn't jam up, anything happens, that's where he sees up. All right, guys, the next thing I'm going to do is take a wire wheel, wire brush. If you have a drill with a attachment, anything like that, you know, just take it and clean this up a little bit. And then we're going to put a little bit of anti-seize on this. Makes it slide in a little bit better, and this is where they usually jam up from being pinched in between here. And be sure on the bolts also, take the wire wheel on the edge of the bolts. We're going to be putting Loctite on these also. Okay, and we're going to just take one bolt. Let me move this up a little bit. There we go. We're going to just take one bolt, and then the Loctite will actually help lubricate it. Now, this is how much Loctite you want to use. No more than that. And you want to use blue. If you use red, it's going to be difficult to get off in the future. Could get a rubber mallet, give her a whack. And if you can't get them lined up, these come in very handy. It's just like a punch, but you could get it in there and move it back and forth to line it up. That one went in pretty good, and you just push like that. You're gonna get the other bolt. Put the Loctite on. There we go. And then you can put your speed sensor wire back on the strut. Just push it in that little clip there. And now we're going to put the nuts back on. Okay, and then this is going to be, I'm torquing them to whatever this Cobalt puts at. And again, don't be satisfied with the electric tool. Make sure you can get a good torque on there and you know it's good and tight. If you're not going to look up the torque specs. I've done so many struts, I know how tight is on these. There's certain things you do want to torque and there's certain things you get a feel for. If you have access to a torque wrench, but if you're doing this on your car and you don't have access to a torque wrench, I wouldn't get one. If you were doing something like head gaskets on your car, you're definitely going to need a torque wrench. Okay guys, next we're going to just put on the stabilizer pins. I keep a pry bar with me because sometimes you have to get it between the control arm and the pry bar just to move it a little bit like that. Crowbar, anything you got. Sometimes a jack handle you could fit in there, I mean, but these are, they use nylon nuts, but they have a hex head in the middle of the bolt. This one happens to be 5mm, but it goes in like that. So if you go to spin that, because remember that this ball's what's in there. So when you go to tighten them up, and these are nylon nuts, that bolt will spin sometimes. So that's what you want to hold it with this while you tighten it with a wrench. See, with one end, just the top one's in now. I'm going to just put a nut on it so it doesn't fall out. And then on the bottom, I don't know if you could get a better view inside there. But if it doesn't line up, I just put the pry bar under here. There it is. And that would be over right at the bottom there. That's where I just slid it through, and then the nut goes through on this side, and just tighten them down. Like I say, you might have to use that if they spin. Okay, those all tightened up without, or them two, without, you know, any resistance. The ball didn't spin. But if it does, this is what you do. You just put this through there, and you have to tighten with a wrench and hold with the ratchet. and then that'll keep the ball from spinning. But usually new, you get one shot. I mean, it's 50-50. I've had brand new ones that ball spins before you could get a good torque on it. And then I've had ones like that just, you know, threaded right in without the need to hold that. But I'd have one handy anyways. It's pretty much the same as the other side, but I mean, I thought that side had a lot of salt on it, but wow. When they throw so much anymore, I mean, this is one salty Hyundai. All right, guys, if you're a little bit handy, that's what I'm saying. Don't be afraid of this one. This one's very low on the difficulty scale, but the only thing you might have trouble with is the stabilizer pins or the links. If you have a torch like what MAP gas, it's going to be no problem. If you live in a place that doesn't get a lot of rust or corrosion, like dry temperature, you might be able to use that. Like that one happened to be 5mm. Some of the factory ones are different size, but if you could put that hex head in there and hold it, and a little bit of WD-40, but around here it usually don't work. You usually need a little bit of heat. That's going to be your hardest part of that. But before I let this car go, I'm going to check, because this is Hunter and Jess, Aaron's son and his girlfriend. Don't want them to be left anywhere. So we're quick to do a RC test, just because the engine has 150,000 miles. And at the same time, do a charging and starting test, make sure this thing isn't going to leave them anywhere real soon. Just a random, this was a starting and charging test I did after I did the struts on it, and everything was, you know, within spec air, nothing great to see. The RC test, just in case you're curious, what a Hyundai with 150,000 miles looks like. And we do have some differences. That, I mean, I'd say is more than 20%. I'm not going to take a precise measurement of it, but we could just tell that all the humps are there, but there's a couple stronger ones, there's a couple weaker ones. This will be, you know, that was just kind of for curiosity, because you wonder, I mean, you don't see too many of the Hyundais running around here with over 150,000. They're all there, but if you look where, like, you know, the difference between one of these low ones and a high one is, like, if you took this one and this one, that's quite a difference. But at any rate, it's firing on all six for the time being. I just figure I'd throw that in there. It only takes a couple seconds to do on every car you get in, you know, then that gives you a little bit more insight to the engine. Hey guys, thanks a lot for sticking around watching. It's a pretty routine strut change, pretty routine RC and charging test. I mean, I like getting out the scope, playing with it for every little bit. I mean, you could tell that ran good, so no big deal with that. But I have a couple videos coming out. I didn't have time to edit them yet. I took a lot of information off Jim's Ford Edge off the ECU. So if you got 8-scope, I got cam, crank, I got current ram, I got all kind of things. Just going to try to take a faster approach to, if it's a known good, I'm going to just present it in a way, like, you know, comparing it with most of the information I got was off of Pico scopes, but I'm using 8-scope. I got some really good parts with the Mixig Vado too on the secondary ignition, 4-channel cam and cranks. Tomorrow I have Monahan. He has it's an Equinox, 2019 Equinox. Somebody told him it needs an alternator. I'm not sure if that's what it is, but we're going to test it before we replace it, and replace it if necessary. But I mean, that'll be a pretty decent one. Dan's dropping off. It's a Honda Accord. It's only got 60,000 miles on it, but it's getting that fuel rail pressure too high code, which is usually the timing chain's off. You know, the lobe hits the high pressure fuel pump before it's supposed to, and it notices that the fuel rail pressure's high. So it's easy to mechanically confirm, but I'm going to try to do it either with a transducer or the cam crank correlation, whatever's easier to get to. There's more than one way of going about it. But I want to see if we could confirm it with a scope, then take off the valve cover, see, then, you know, confirm it with our eyes. But all right, guys, thanks a lot for sticking around. It means a lot, Tony. All right, adios.